Chairperson of NCIC, Kefo Mae, Nyamoya, and your entire team of commissioners and office staff, the chair of the Electoral Commission, Erastus Ndung Ethekon, the deputy IG who is with us here, leaders of political parties, religious leaders, members of the civil society, private sector, our youth, and our collaborating partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I think it is still morning, so I say good morning. Good morning. When Kipchumba was making his remarks, I thought it was so important. He didn't have to worry about the latitude he had. Because I think today we are gathered here for a very, very important meeting. That's why we are here. Very, very important. And I hope the import of this gathering will receive sufficient attention and sufficient propagation, because the consequence of what will be discussed here can either make or break the country. That is how serious this gathering is. And that is why we are here to work together, move together, collaborate, so that we can ensure that we save our country from disaster. So let me begin by thanking the National Cohesion and Integration Commission for inviting me to preside over the launch of this roadmap to a violence-free 2027 general election titled Uchaguzi Bila Noma, Bila Fujo. I think the title captures, in very few words, what we all want to see. We want an election that is competitive, vigorous, at times even noisy, because that is the nature of politics. But we also want an election in which, when the votes have been cast and counted, Kenyans remain united as Kenyans. We may support different candidates and belong to different political parties, but we must remain one people and one nation. That is why this roadmap is important. Over the past several election cycles, Kenya has made progress. We have witnessed closely contested elections conducted with greater restraint than in the past. We should acknowledge that progress. But we should also be honest with ourselves. Peace is not something that we inherit permanently. It has to be built, maintained, and guarded, particularly when political temperatures begin to rise. And that responsibility does not belong to one institution, one sector of society, as several speakers have indicated. A peaceful election cannot be delivered by NCIC alone. Neither can it be delivered by IBC alone. Government, political parties, religious leaders, civil society, the private sector, all must act in consonance. It requires all of us working together in the national interest. I have become increasingly convinced that in our national conversation, we sometimes underestimate the economic value of peace and stability. We rightly speak about roads, railways, ports, airports, power plants, and other infrastructure. These investments are indeed critical to our development. They create the physical foundation upon which economic growth can take place. But we must also ask ourselves a more fundamental question. What is the value of infrastructure if people do not feel safe enough to use it? What is the value of a modern railway if insecurity keeps people from traveling? What is the value of a port and an industrial park or a major investment if businesses and investors are uncertain about what tomorrow will bring? Peace may not appear as a line item in the national budget. By the way, if you look for it, you'll not find it. You cannot touch it, and you cannot easily place it on a conventional balance sheet. But peace has enormous economic value. Peace creates confidence. It gives families the confidence to plan their lives. It gives businesses the confidence to invest. It gives employers the confidence to hire. It gives young people the confidence to build their future at home, here at home. And it gives investors the confidence that their capital will be safe and the rules of the game will remain stable. Conversely, when peace and stability are disrupted, the cost is immediate and far-reaching. We saw this very clearly in 2007 and 2008. And indeed, the previous speakers, particularly the chairman of IBC, has dwelt substantially on this. Lives were lost. Families were displaced. Businesses were destroyed. Children were forced out of school. Economic activity was disrupted. Jobs disappeared. And communities that had lived side by side for generations suddenly began to look at each other with suspicion. That experience should remain firmly in our national memory. I will say something about this a little later, just to emphasize. Because infrastructure can be rebuilt, roads can be repaired, businesses can reopen, markets can recover, economies eventually regain lost ground. But when a life is lost, there is no reconstruction project that can bring that person back. That is why preventing violence, political violence, is not simply about protecting the electoral process. It is about protecting the Kenyan economy, protecting livelihoods, and above all, protecting Kenyan lives. We must therefore understand that political confidence and economic confidence move together. Investors watch our politics. Employers watch our politics. Small traders watch our politics. Families watch our politics. When uncertainty grows, people become cautious. Investment is postponed. Hiring slows down. Businesses hold back. And those who feel the impact first are often the ordinary Kenyans who have the least room to absorb an economic shock. Most of you here have a secondary insurance somewhere. The people who are hit hardest don't have that insurance, that luxury. So a peaceful and credible election is not merely a political objective. It is also an economic objective and a national development objective. As rightly said here, peace does not begin on election day. By the time Kenyans line up to vote, much of the work of preserving peace should already have been done. That is why I welcome this roadmap. But I want us to see it not simply as a document to be launched today and placed on a shelf. It must become a living framework for action. Its early warning, dialogue, and mitigation mechanisms must work before tensions become crises. We must identify risks early, intervene early, and keep channels of communication open. Because once anger becomes fear, and fear becomes hostility, restoring trust becomes much harder and much more expensive. This brings me to the role of political leadership. We can disagree. We can campaign vigorously. We can challenge one another. We can criticize government and opposition. We can defend our political positions with passion. That is democracy. But political competition must never become a license to dehumanize our opponents. Words matter. What a leader says from a podium matters. What a political party circulates on social media matters. What an influencer repeats to millions of young Kenyans matters. What a media platform chooses to amplify matters. Even what each one of us forwards to a WhatsApp group matters. Sometimes violence begins long before the first stone is thrown, and I think the minister emphasized that point as well. It begins with language. It begins with a steady normalization of contempt, hatred, and suspicion. That is why peace must be built in ordinary places as much as it is protected in national institutions. It is built in our homes, in our markets, in churches and mosques, in workplaces, in matatu stages, in our communities, and increasingly now on our phones. Every Kenyan, therefore, has a role to play. I want in particular to make an appeal to our young people. You are not passive spectators in the politics of this country. You are informed, energetic, and deeply engaged. You have every right to question those who lead you, including those of us in government. You have the right to demand accountability, better leadership, and better opportunities. But I also ask you to hold yourselves to the same high standard. Do not allow politics to persuade you that another Kenyan is your enemy simply because he or she supports a different candidate. An election will come and go. Campaign posters will eventually come down. Political slogans will fade like NASA. NASA how? Politicians who disagree loudly today will sometimes sit in the same meeting tomorrow and work together on matters of national interest. But ordinary Kenyans will continue living side by side. So why should we destroy friendships, family ties, and relationships today that we may desperately need tomorrow? Our democratic institutions too must be allowed to do their work professionally, independently, and within the Constitution. The IEBC must be able to manage the electoral process. The judiciary must be able to discharge its constitutional responsibilities. Our security agencies must protect citizens and uphold the law. NCIC must continue its difficult but essential work of addressing hate speech, discrimination, and incitement. And all of us must respect these institutions, including when their decisions do not go in our favor. That does not require us to agree with every decision. It requires us to accept that democracy is sustained by institutions and rules, not by whether an outcome happens to please us. Our task, therefore, is not to eliminate disagreement. That would neither be possible nor desirable. Our task is to learn how to disagree without becoming enemies. As we move towards 2027, we should keep reminding ourselves of a very simple truth. Kenya is bigger than any election. Kenya is bigger than any political party. Kenya is bigger than any individual politician. Peace and stability are among our greatest national assets. We must therefore protect them with the same seriousness with which we protect our most important economic investments. And we must not wait for violence to begin before we ask where we went wrong. Let us act early. Let us keep talking, even when conversations are difficult. Let us listen to one another. Let us lower the temperature when necessary. Let us hold the leaders accountable for the language they use. And let us make peaceful political competition a habit rather than an exception. Because ultimately, the Kenya we want to build after 2027 will still need all of us. Our success is tied together. When Kenya is peaceful, we all benefit. When Kenya is unstable, we all pay. That is why this roadmap matters. And that is why today I am pleased to join the National Cohesion and Integration Commission and all our partners in launching the roadmap to a violence-free 2027 general election, Uchaguzi Bila Noma, second edition. If you can indulge me just for 2 minutes or so, just to emphasize a few things. It is true that after the elections of 2007, 2008, Kenya lost 1,400 souls. Obviously, majority of them were young souls. Here in Kibera, there was a situation where there was a sniper that was called the butcher of Kibera. And I want to be a little bit lurid, but I want you to try and conceptualize this. When you go to a hospital or a morgue and you see live a small hole and a shattered scalp at the end, then you realize that those who talk about enjoying a bit of excitement at a political rally have no clue about what they're talking about. There's no fun when you see young people dead, either through a bullet or through a machete or through a blunt object that has been used against these people. We must deal with these things squarely, collectively. We must not allow political lynching in the name of ethnicity, in the name of economic class. We must not allow any form of lynching. How many of you, as intelligent as you are today in this room, and those listening to us, when you go to hospital, how many of you would dare ask about the ethnicity of your blood donor when you need blood? Maybe the person you vilify so most, with so much vigor and gusto, perhaps it's his blood that through a transfusion is going to save your life in your hour of need. So we must be careful with what we say. Equally, we must not have social media lynching. Let's talk candidly about these things. There's also media lynching. It's happening. Let's talk candidly and honestly about this. And it's building up systematically. And if we don't self-regulate and then manage ourselves, we are going to drive this country into chaos. Imagine for a moment if the IG and his team and the CS for Interior, just imagine for a moment if they went on strike and decided they're not going to work. What will you be left with? We can have a bit of strike from the teachers. We can have strike from nurses. We can have the Matatu strike. But try to ever imagine a moment if your security agencies in totality went on strike. These are the deeper issues that we need to ask. I want to ask the people on the social media. Kenya is not perfect. It's not. Democracy and the way we build it's work in progress. But surely, when you continue to glorify failed democracies somewhere in the Sahel on social media. And pretend that those are the working economies. Do you know what you're talking about? These are the fundamental questions that we have to have here. This is the dialogue that we need to have, the conversation that we need to have honestly with each other. In Sudan, over 14 million children are not going to school. Heaven knows how many people are displaced now. But let's also face it. There's a Middle East crisis. There's the conflict in Ukraine. Who is paying attention to the conflicts in Africa? If we lose Kenya, it will just be counted as just another round of the conflicts that we see across Africa. Nobody is going to pay special attention. It is us, me, you, and many others who are not here, who must pay special attention to Kenya. Not anybody else. It's us. We must elect good people. Imagine when we talk about Gunism and all that. Can you imagine if you had a parliament of thugs? Yeah. Because if you glorify leaders who excite you on a stage with violence, and you think that that is the best example of leadership, then eventually you're going to have a parliament that is full of thugs. That's going to be the consequence. People who don't respect the rule of law. You'll be creating a very dangerous institution, clothed as a parliament, but it is a dangerous institution. So we need to really think through some of these things. Criticism is okay. Correction is better. Criticize, but also provide positive solutions, because correction is better. I was involved in the process of trying to mediate after the 2007-2008 conflict. We were with the sitting president today, President William Ruto, and others who are in this country. Under the mediation process of Kofi Annan, Mkapa, and Gracia Machel. Perhaps we succeeded at that time because there was no Ukraine war. Perhaps we succeeded to mediate and have the peace come through because there was no serious Middle East crisis. Maybe that is why the global attention was different. But today, if we wreck ourselves, let me tell you, the parameters, the geopolitics are different. It's not going to be the same. We negotiated for 42 days to bring peace and tranquility back into the country. It then morphed into the Grand Coalition government, then laid the groundwork eventually for the constitution that we all enjoy today. It was a process. born out of severe bloodletting and slaughter. We cannot go back there. We should not go back there. We should not even contemplate going back there. So I want to appeal to you that this is a very important forum. Our country depends on how we decide or choose to move forward as we go on. It's not a walk in the park. We have responsibility. I went to a youth program at Nyangori PAG a few days ago. It was the World Youth Week, UN Youth Week. So they were celebrating in different areas. So I went to one. And there was a young lady who came there and she announced that she wants to contest for one of the electoral seats. And she spoke and I was very amused. But she then said, I have come to declare that I intend to contest because as Gen Z, when we tried to enter the parliament by climbing over the gates, we were told it was wrong. So now I have decided that I want to offer myself for an electoral seat. And I thought that was a very, very fundamental statement from that young person. The gradual realization that it is through the ballot that we will solidify this country, and not otherwise. I am a strong supporter of the president. And that is why I've been saying that his victory can only come through one way, through the ballot. A peaceful process through the ballot. Not in any other form. There is no other constitutional way. It has to be through the ballot. So, as a famous politician from Bungoma, with a very heavy Luya accent like mine, I would always say, tukutane kwa tepe. Tukutane wapi? Katepe. But to get there, we have to follow the chart, the pathway, the roadmap that has been launched today. Ladies and gentlemen, I've taken a lot of your time, but this was such an essential matter, in my view, that we have all taken this extra time, but for a good purpose. And it's a journey that we must walk together. Every young man, every young woman, every male, every female, all of us collectively, and all our institutions, we must hold hands and walk together. God bless you.